Today's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek, our presenting sponsor. The easiest way to shop for the best tickets thanks to their revolutionary grading system. Jacko, are you using SeatGeek? Please tell me you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's my favorite ticket buying experience.
My listeners get $10 off baseball tickets the first time they use SeatGeek. You just waltz into Yankee Stadium. You just waltz in. They're like, Jacko, where can we put you?
Absolutely.
Most people don't have that luxury, so they can use promo code BSMLB and you get $10 off. Download the SeatGeek app today or go right to SeatGeek.com. We're also brought to you by Joe House's new podcast, House of Carbs. Jacko, you've known House since September 1988, maybe even August 1988.
August of 88, yes.
We didn't even know what a podcast was back then, but we knew that Joe House was destined to talk about food to complete strangers, correct?
Absolutely. He's found his calling, no, without a question.
What was your favorite eating experience with Joe House? Do you have one?
I remember going to Las Vegas. I forgot if it was for your bachelor party or his bachelor party, and we went out to breakfast in the casino, wherever we were staying, at the Bellagio or whatever, and he ordered something, and then the waiter or waitress went to move on, and he's like, oh, no, I'm not done, and then he ordered like 2 more things. It was like 3 separate entrees. I think it was like, obviously we had woken up late, so he kind of covered the breakfast, lunch, like his own little brunch. Like he wasn't sure if he wanted eggs or like a sandwich and decided just to get both.
Right. Yeah.
As well as like a cheeseburger. So that was pretty funny.
That sounds like somebody who should be hosting a podcast about eating. It's called House of Carbs. This week, David.
The waitress.
Oh, go ahead.
The waitress thought he was ordering for the whole table, and then she started to walk away. We're like, wait a second, we'd like something too.
This week he has David Chang, Mike Lombardi, and myself talking about diners. I told the story about Mr. G's Diner, Jersey Shore. Yeah, I did. Because we were talking about the authentic experience about diners and how they're usually owned by one person or a family. And I was like, my favorite diner I've ever been to was Mr. G, which had the Mr. G special sauce. And we always had that joke about how he made the special sauce, and we really didn't want to know.
Well, right. No, I think what it was actually, it was the Mrs. G special. And when it came, you said, this looks more like it was made by Mr. G.
That's right. That's the Mrs. G special.
I actually just talked about that at the last time I was on a podcast when I went to our reunion and we went out for breakfast, and I told all the guys that I was hanging out with at the reunion we were eating breakfast about the Mr. and Mrs. G from the Jersey Shore.
Yeah, these are the stories.
That's probably the hardest I've ever laughed in my life when they brought that out, and we all looked at our hungover selves all looked at that thing, and I almost coughed up a lung.
Yeah, those are the kind of stories that House of Carbs inspires. You can listen to that podcast, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we should mention Talk the Thrones, our new Twitter show, which comes on immediately after Game of Thrones ends on HBO. All you have to do is go to Twitter, go to @Ringer, our Twitter feed, or you can just type in the Game of Thrones hashtag and it'll be pinned at the top. Chris Ryan, Andy Greenwald, Mallory Rubin, Jason Concepcion, all talking about the greatest show on television right now and really breaking it down like Mel Kiper Jr., Charles Barkley. Name your studio analyst. Jacko, you're in on Game of Thrones.
Sadly, I'm not. You tried to get me in a few years ago.
You never got in?
I never got in, and now I feel like so left out because, I go on Twitter and I don't know how many people I follow, 40 or 50 or whatever, and every other tweet for like Sunday was all Game of Thrones, and you might as well be tweeting in Sanskrit to me. Like I don't understand any of these things. So at this point, it's such a daunting task to now get in on the ground level and rewatch however many seasons it is.
Yeah. Well,
maybe in the winter when we're like snowed in and cold, I'll get my wife and we can get in on Game of Thrones. But because I do feel at sea. So
my dad banged out 60 episodes in 2 weeks, but he's retired.
Exactly.
So
maybe I'll take a leave of absence from work and say I've got to catch up on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, you can say you have to have a surgery and just go away for 2 weeks.
Right.
Coming up later, Shea Serrano. Coming up right now, Jacko. But first, Pearl Jam. All right, that was the soothing sounds of Jacko you heard at the beginning of this podcast. My buddy, my old college roommate, lifelong Yankee fan, lifelong Republican, We're going to talk Yankees first. You came on like about, I don't know, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, and then Aaron Judge went to like 4 other levels, culminating in his home run derby 2-hour orgasm, which then sent his career in a tailspin. So at first, we should probably talk about that.
He got 2 hits last night. Come on.
I'm already remembering it nostalgically when Aaron Judge was good. It's like you look back. It's like when Larry Bird was good before he hurt his back. Now it's like, oh, Aaron Judge. Remember him before the home run derby? He's a really
blasphemer.
He's a really charismatic guy, though. Let's start here. Derek Jeter's retiring, and all the Yankee fans are just almost catatonic. They don't have their hero anymore. Their whole world has collapsed. And then Aaron Judge emerges from the ashes. He's a 6'7" version of Derek Jeter. He actually kind of looks like he could be Derek Jeter's giant son. He hits the longest homers we've seen since the heyday of Sosa and McGuire, who were, obviously loaded up on all kinds of performance enhancers. He's 6'7".
Right.
He seems like a great guy. Everyone talks about what a great person he is, which always makes me suspicious whenever that happens in sports. But in this case, it really does seem like he's a nice guy. This is like out of central casting. Is this the most important person in your life other than your 2 kids?
And my wife. I don't want to throw my wife under the bus.
Yeah, he's funny.
He's up there. He definitely is. I mean, if you could be anybody's agent in sports, you could make an awesome case for Judge because he's in New York City, obviously. He's a New York Yankee. It's a totally marketable team. He's got this name Judge that plays in with this whole, all these people in judicial robes and judicial wigs and the gavel and the whole 9 yards and the judges' chambers and all rise. It's like he's this gigantic guy, the biggest position player in the history of baseball. He wears number 99. It's kind of like Wild Thing from Major League. He's got this number. He's a super down to earth. He won't bang his chest and praise himself. Even if he has a multiple home run day or a multiple hit day or does some amazing things, he's always talks about the team or the starting pitcher or somebody who made a good defensive play. I mean, he is the total package. Now, I think he was raised right. As his parents were teachers, they emphasized doing his homework first and everything. And he just seems to be like this miracle kid that came out of it's like The Natural, out of the Nebraska wheat fields. And he's just he's from California, actually. I know he's not from Nebraska, but The Natural, where this guy came out of nowhere and the kid's just put the team on his back and set New York on fire. It's incredible. I saw a great interview with his father, Victor Conti. And Victor was saying, "Oh my God, you bastard! I'm hanging up."
Hey, listen. Anytime somebody can hit more homers in their first major league season than they did in their entire minor league career, I'm sure it's on the level.
He just got up from the minors. They test every freaking day in the minors. Come on.
No, I know.
He's 6'7". He weighs 286. He's a freaking giant.
I'm just bitter. I don't know how this happened. It makes me so angry. I was so happy to live in a world where the Yankees had no hero. And this whole generation of Yankee fans was going to grow up without anyone to idolize. And they're going to be talking to themselves in Didi Gregorius and Matt Holliday.
Good.
Yeah, he is good.
Yeah.
But this is out of central casting. I mean, I don't want to jump the gun. Actually, I do. Because if I jinx Aaron Judge, God bless myself. But if this goes the way it's going, I think he's going to be in the running for the all-time most popular Yankee. I mean, what's more fun than a slugger who can come up and at any point in the game hit a 500-foot homer? That's the number one draft pick for what you'd want from a baseball star.
I mean, it's he's Ruthie and he hits these home runs. It's not just that he hits home runs, but he hits them. I mean, he hits the places where nobody has ever hit them before. So it's really it's like a Hollywood movie. It's crazy. And it's total. That's what people like about baseball. You want to see moonshot home runs. So he's got the total package. If a guy comes up and he's a great pitcher, Doc Gooden, way back when in the 80s for the Mets, he kind of caught the fire of New York. But it's different with a pitcher, and he throws hard, strikes out a lot of guys. But home runs are that's what baseball is all about. So to hit these shots that break TVs and luxury suites and hit places in Marlin Stadium where NASA said balls were never supposed to go. It's just absolutely incredible. I mean, he's got the whole world ahead of him, really. There's no limit to what he can be or what he can do for the Yankees.
If somebody said Aaron Judge is going to tear his bicep unless you eat a plate of cat poop, would you eat the cat poop?
I'd give it a good long consideration. Yeah,
Probably look at the cat
I'd probably
poop first.
negotiate the terms of the poop,
Yeah, maybe
like what the cat ate beforehand and how big it had to be. But I'd contemplate it.
I gotta say, just as a Red Sox fan who just hates this more than anything, I've been ever since I start watching baseball after I'm in NBA, as Sal calls me. I'm an NBA hole. But then basketball ends, it gets through the draft, free agency, and right around like end of June, I'm monitoring the Red Sox, but I'm not watching. I've been watching a ton of baseball since we turned the calendar to July, and I've found myself because like on DirecTV, it's like Nesson's 628, I think, and I think the Yes Network's like 631, and this is the first time I can ever remember doing this. I found myself like kind of flicking over the Yankee game to see if Judge is coming up.
Right.
Unheard of. I hate the Yankees. I'm just like,
it really is like a must-watch TV. Like if Yankees game is boring and they've been awful for the past month, and I'm like, well, Judge is up next inning. Let me just stick around and watch Judge hit. Like,
yeah,
because you don't know what he's capable of or what he could do, and you want to be able to see it. And my daughter, who's 11, is like head over heels in love with him.
You should try
I don't know if there's a lot of
10 years from now, you should work that.
Absolutely. I know.
You could be Aaron Judge's father-in-law. Yeah.
Like Jeter didn't get married till he was 40. 15
right.
years, my daughter will be 26. I'm like, that could actually work.
That'd be the most emotional wedding toast you could give as a father-in-law.
Oh, my God.
My two favorite people have decided to join forces. Yeah, I remember when the Red Sox got Manny, and we just never had a hitter like him before. In that first year of 2000, I remember like just no matter what was going on, I was like, well, Manny's coming up in 3 at-bats, or Manny's coming up next inning. And even when you went to the game, nobody went to the bathroom and Manny was up. Ortiz, who, was on the Red Sox longer and I think is more popular. He never got to the level for me where it was like, oh my God, Ortiz is up. Because they even hit homers. They weren't like these majestic bombs. But this
Plus,
Judge
in the back of
different.
your mind, you knew it was kind of tainted.
No, I didn't know it was tainted.
Really,
Are you talking about Judge
really
or Ortiz?
Fully embrace it. I'm talking about Ortiz.
Oh, all right.
You always had that little question mark in the back of your mind.
I really
that wouldn't
didn't.
let you fully embrace it.
I really didn't. There are a couple other Red Sox players. Yeah,
that's called guilt.
There's a couple others on the 03 team I might have had a little some questions about.
Some inklings.
Yeah, but man, when you have somebody on your team like that even if it's like you're down 8-2, but it's like, this guy's coming up next inning, I'm going to stick around. That's
exactly.
That's the best. This Yankee team in general is really good. I don't know if it's great, but it's in the mix. I think I watched a bunch of Yankees Red Sox over the weekend, and the big hole was the bullpen, and then you went out and you got
Robertson and Conley, or however you pronounce his name. Yeah.
So
that should help, because they're and really they got rid of Tyler Clippard, who was the bane of my existence. So the fact that when I was tired last night, I went to bed early because I'm old, and there was rumors of this trade and whatever, and I was like, I'm curious what prospect they'll give up, but I just couldn't stay awake, and I went to bed. I got up today and I saw I had 20 plus notifications on Twitter, and I'm like, oh my God, what did they do? And I looked and it said Tyler Clippard was gone, and I had gone on some epic Tyler Clippard rants lately when he was like, giving up, moonshot home runs and giving up, I think opposing batters were hitting like 375 against them. And I just couldn't take any more Tyler Clippard. So it was really like I said on Twitter, it was like Christmas morning. Like whatever else happens with the trade, somebody actually wanted Tyler Clippard. Like that, it's unheard of. So that's a win-win-win regardless of what else happens with Robertson or Frazier or Conley. So
I would look at the other way. I think during this trade, the Yankees were like, all right, we'll do this with it, but you have to take Tyler Clippard.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely.
I don't think the White Sox are like, hey, is any chance we get Tyler Clippard, the guy who's been getting racked for 5 weeks?
Chapman should get the Executive of the Year just for including Clippard in this thing to get him out of town.
Well, I have a lot of personal history with a lot of dynamics with this trade because that crazy AL keeper league I'm in. We're fighting with this other team to win the title this year. It's like it's all culminated. We made a big trade last week. Like we're really going for it. But we have Chapman and Betances.
Right, I remember you saying that at the beginning of the year.
And they've been overworked, and Betances,
Yeah.
you can see it's like it's really affected him the last 6 weeks.
His control has been horrible, and you got to figure he's tired and, he's overworked. His control has been horrible.
And Chapman
hasn't been great since he came back from the DL.
He
wasn't great before he went on the DL, to be honest. But,
no,
he's not been Chapman-esque. That's worrisome.
And you've blown 18 saves, and it wasn't all Chapman, but at some course of 18 different games, a save was blown. So
yeah.
The White Sox, that guy Conley, like the third or fourth week of the year, he had pitched like 8 innings and had like 17 strikeouts, like one of those crazy things.
Yeah.
And I put in for him, and I put in on a phone on a free agent transaction for like $1. I'm like, I'm gonna grab this guy, and somehow my phone screwed it up, and it didn't go through. And I was like, oh man, I'll get him next week. And then he had like 9 strikeouts in 3 innings or something the next week, and then somebody else picked him up for $6. So he's been haunting me all year. I've been watching him. The guy, he's basically 2 strikeouts an inning.
Now, his strikeout stats are fantastic.
And Robertson's good too. So now you have 4 relievers. You know, the Red Sox, Joe Kelly got hurt. Joe Kelly was lights out this year, but he just got hurt.
Right.
And then they had a 16-inning game against your Yankees on Saturday. And then last night, I think it was 15 innings. And it just feels like this bullpen's going to crater unless they do something. I'm worried. I feel like the Yankees might be coming.
Well, all year I was so excited, and like I went to a extended family gathering in New Jersey at the weekend of June 10th, and we're coming home on June 11th, and the Yankees had won 16-3 on Saturday, and they're winning 14-3 on Sunday. And they're in first place by like 4 or 5 games. I'm like, oh my God. And we were driving over the George Washington Bridge, and I'm listening to the game on the radio, subjecting my family to the dulcet tones of John Sterling and Susan Waldman. And I'm like, this Yankees team, like, my God. And I'm looking at Manhattan as I drive over the bridge, and I'm like, the Yanks, this is great. And they went to the West Coast, and they completely fell apart. And they just have had the roughest month, and everything was like hitting on all cylinders, and you expected they were going to come back to earth a little bit because nobody expected them to play at the level they were playing at, but I didn't expect this abject misery for like literally 5 weeks now. Where I think they've gone like 10 and 21. But I mean, hopefully this is like a spark to turn things around.
I still think the team's good because, like, if you look at the run differential, which obviously is a flawed stat in a lot of ways, but you guys are plus 101. The only other team that's over 100 in the American League is the Astros, are plus 169. The Red Sox are only plus 63. I don't know what your record is in close games, but it does fit. Like the Yankees right now, as we're taping this, are 48 and 44. Right. But I would argue your bullpen, if you had a decent bullpen, if you had the bullpen you have right now for the whole season, I think you would be like 8 to 10 wins higher.
Yeah, I mean, during the course of this awful run, they had leads in a lot of those games. Even out on the West Coast, when things started to go bad, they had leads, and then they inexplicably blew them. Yeah. And, I mean, Betances and Chapman, the bullpen was supposed to be a strength, and it has not been a strength. So this trade can only help. I think Robertson's done it before in New York. Conley has amazing strikeout numbers. And, analysts were saying on Twitter today that this is trying to follow the Royals model in 2014 of shortening the games and having amazing bullpen. Your starters might be a little shaky, but if your starters only have to go 5 and you can run out Robertson, Conley, Betances, and Chapman, hopefully if it goes according to plan, that hopefully that's going to work out more often than not. I'm happy with it. I mean, they gave up this kid Rutherford, who's their number 3 prospect, but he's an outfielder. So you got Judge and you got Frazier, and there's not a lot of places for him to play, and you got to give up something to get something. So I think overall it was a good move. So we have Rutherford in my League of Dorks team. So I've been monitoring him closely because we're kind of dangling him for trades, and the big fear was that they're going to trade to the National League. But he's really good. I mean, yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, the White Sox have made all these trades where they're just cherry picking these top 50 baseball America guys. They have just a shit. I think they have 8, including like the top 100 I saw this morning. They have that Moncada that the Red Sox gave them. Kopech, the guy who throws like 104 miles an hour. And then they got the guy from the Cubs. They got Rutherford. They're stockpiling. So 4 years from now, we're gonna have to worry about them. But what
The Aaron Judge thing, does he have like a partner in crime? Is Sanchez like, is it like a Dirk Diggler, Reed Rothschild type of thing? Or not really?
No, not really. I mean, Sanchez, since he came off the DL, he's been good too. And you kind of forget about, he was the Aaron Judge of last year over a shorter period of time for the last 2-3 months of the season, but he didn't put up quite the numbers Judge did, but he hit home runs very quickly in a short period of time. So that Sanchez, that lineup you look at, and they brought up Clint Frazier. He's been really good. So he had a walk off. He's only got 3 home runs, but his average is coming up, and people rave about his swing. So. Yeah, you would like to think that Judge and Sanchez are the Ruth and Gehrig of the 21st century murderers row, but he's been good. But like Sanchez seems to pal around with with Ronald Torreyes, who's like a 5 foot whatever infielder, and they have a shtick. It's kind of like a Twins deal where Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dave DeVito, one's huge and one's small, and guys lift up Torreyes to high five Judge, and in Yankees magazine they like switch jerseys, and so it seems like they're buddies. So I don't know who he hangs out with on the team, but they seem to be buddies.
Pineda's arm finally fell apart. We've been waiting for it for 5 years. I had him on fantasy teams. His motion just seemed like at some point something terrible was going to happen. So you still need another starter.
Unfortunate. What's that?
You still need another starter.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have this kid Jordan Montgomery who's pitching today, who's been
he's been good.
Severino, who are the young guys, have been their best guys.
Yeah,
Severino's come back to earth a little bit, but Tanaka has not been great, to say the least, and he's given up home runs at an amazing rate. And Pineda, even before he got hurt, he was a roller coaster ride. So yeah, they could. And Sabathia, he was great and he went on the DL, and then he's had one bad start and one good start. So he's a crapshoot because of his age and the miles on his arms. You never know what you're going to get. So yeah, they could desperately use another starter. But unless the philosophy is that now they shorten the games with the bullpen, and all you need is 5 innings out of a guy, and maybe they figure they can get that. I don't know.
Well, you're going to score runs, which is a problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Very important question here. Now that Clippard is gone, who's your least favorite Yankee?
Oh, that's a good question.
Who's going to bear the brunt of your 11 o'clock p.m., 2 glasses of wine and your tirades?
Well, Chase Headley's always a good candidate for score, and the thing is, I don't really dislike Chase Headley, and I always felt bad about Tyler Clippard for my rants against him, but he was just so bad. He seemed like a nice kid, and he was out there trying, but he was.
I think you're better than that. I think they were mean. I don't know. What if Tyler Clippard has Twitter? What if he's following you and you're just hurting his feelings, making it worse?
I'd like to publicly apologize to Tyler Clippard.
That's good.
You said in anger that I didn't mean the next day. So I wish you all the best in Chicago, and maybe in a couple of years when they're good, you'll be still kicking around in the bullpen. All the best.
Well, speaking of...
Hopefully pitching against the Yankees in an ALCS.
Speaking of wine-related rants...
Yes.
Have you heard about TryWink.com?
TryWink?
Yeah.
I have not.
They make it very, very easy to get exceptional wines from all over the world delivered every month right to your door in time for your 11 p.m. Tyler Clippard rant. It's a personalized wine club, recommends wine specifically for members based on the results of their palate profile quiz. Go to trywink.com, TRYWINC.com. They take your feedback into account so they can learn more about your preferences with every order. What are your preferences, Jacko? Are you a red wine guy?
Yeah, I am a red wine guy, yeah. And a lot of people in the summer, they'll switch to white, which is nice if you're day drinking at a picnic or something.
Yeah,
but
I'm
more of a red wine guy.
Rosé is in now.
Cabernet.
The ladies are drinking a lot of rosé lately. Yeah. Well,
You have?
I'm not a rosé guy.
No. My wife will have an occasional rosé.
Yeah. I look down
on all the rage.
I look down on men who drink rosé, but that's just me. Join for free, skip any month, cancel anytime. They even have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. You never pay for a bottle you don't like. Sign up for Wink right now.
Ooh.
Get introduced to new and rare wines that you can't get anywhere else. Right now, Wink offering my listeners $20 off their first order plus complimentary shipping, shape shifting, and shipping. If you go to trywink.com/BS, fine wine personalized for your palate, coming right to your door. That is TRYWINC.com/BS. Hey, my team played your team for 4 days.
Yeah.
What Red Sox player were you most scared of when they were coming up to the plate?
Not really any. That's been an amazing part. I mean, now that David Ortiz is gone, I had such fear of David Ortiz for the past 12 years of my life that now that he's gone, I literally like nobody in that lineup gives me the feelings that Ortiz gave me of like fear, loathing, and hatred, and worry as to how hard he was going to hit it. And I saw an amazing stat. I was watching the game. I think it was on Saturday was it the Saturday game? It was not the one that went. I don't think I was watching the one that went 15 innings, but when I was watching one of the Saturday games, and the Red Sox were like 2 for 61 with runners in scoring position against the Yankees this year. And they had some other stat where they've been shut out against the Yankees like 3 times this year, and instead of the previous 30 years that they had only done it like 5 times or some crazy stat, whatever it was. But their offense has really been anemic against the Yankees this year.
We lost our 2 Yankee killers. We lost Manny in 2008.
Yeah.
And then Ortiz, obviously, last year. Those were really the only 2 guys in the history of the franchise since the Babe Ruth sale.
I mean, Ortiz is up there with like all-time Yankee killers. Like Eddie Murray used to kill the Yankees. George Brett used to kill the Yankees. When I was a kid, they would always come up and kill the Yankees. Edgar Martinez was a Yankee killer. They could never get him out. And then Ortiz was legendary for that. The Yankees couldn't get Ortiz out to save their lives.
Yeah.
So now that he's gone, I breathe a huge sigh of relief.
Mookie Betts, I almost did a couple of tweets about him this weekend, and I held off. Mookie Betts has been like quietly disappointing this year. It's been a really weird season where he's had like somewhere between 8 to 10 awesome games, but over the whole course of the body of work, he just hasn't been consistent. It's like his stats. If you took out like his 8 best games, he's probably hitting like 230. Like I looked it up. Last year he had 30 games where he didn't get a hit. This year on Sunday when I was looking up, he'd already had 30 games where he didn't get a hit. And I don't know whether it's like there's more pressure on him because of Ortiz or what's going on, but they don't have that like stable, you got to worry about this guy. This stable set, this guy is awesome person. And it's like, my Red Sox friends, we're texting back and forth about whether they should make a move for Machado, which would really only be like a year and a half, and whether that's worth it. They have this guy, Rafael Devers, who's a top 10, top 5 prospect, depending on what list you're looking at, who's a third baseman, but he's not ready yet. Their third basemen have been just one of the all-time abysses in the history of the franchise. I mean, it's just an unbelievable.
Is it fair to say Pablo Sandoval signing was a little bit of a disappointment?
I would say it was the worst contract.
Down a little?
I would say it was the worst contract of my lifetime, but we gave Carl Crawford like $180 million or whatever that was. We have 2. The Red Sox have handed out, not to complain because we won 3 World Series, but the Red Sox have handed out 2 of the 5 worst contracts of all time.
Yeah, that Sandoval contract is just a disaster. My God. It's a disaster of epic proportions.
My son, I don't know if I've told you about this. My son loves baseball now. And,
That's good.
And it started because he played on a team last fall and then this spring and really got into it. And he goes on these deep dives. Like, it was Hamilton, pro wrestling, hockey. Like he's all in when he's in. And it's been in with baseball. And it's like watching an alien learn about baseball. It's like he landed from another planet. It's like, what's this? And he just is following the history of baseball on YouTube. And he goes on his iPad and he's like, Dad, how about that Giants come back and whatever? And I'm like, oh my God. But so
Bobby Thompson.
Right. So he's like a blank slate. And he's been watching this Red Sox season and watching a lot of games with me. And just instinctively, knowing nothing, knew that Pablo Sandoval was the worst baseball player in the league. He was like, why is he so fat? Why is he so bad on defense? Why do they play him there? He stinks. How can we not have him on the team? It was hilarious because he's 9, but even he knows nothing. And he knew this was the worst baseball player in the league. And it got to the point where they were like, all right, Devin Marrero is going to just go 0 for 4 every game, but at least ground balls just won't go by him. And and then they brought this guy Lynn up, who they tried to get. It was like Lynn Sanity, like he had 2 hits once. And now Brock Holt's back, who battled vertigo and has this look on his face like he just got off a fishing boat that had like a really rocky trip. And he's up there trying to hit. I feel bad for him. Like he just doesn't look right. So I think they're going to be a trade for a third baseman waiting to happen. I thought it was going to be Todd Frazier, but
well, that was the
rumor
in. That the Yanks swooped in with a better prospect, and it's such a strange thing to hear the Yankees have better prospects than the Red Sox because that's not been the case over the recent history, maybe all history, but certainly recent history. So, yeah, because I had somebody on Twitter last night when there was first rumors of a trade, and they're like, oh, Frazier was held out of the White Sox game, a healthy scratch, and they're like, maybe he's coming to the Red Sox. And then it was like, then I saw these rumors about, the Yankees going for him and for Robertson, and that was the beginning of it. So, everybody thought Frazier to the Red Sox was a done deal.
We had good prospects, but Dave Dombrowski just started trading them all over the place. The Chris Sale trade's been amazing. I would do that one again. Chris Sale is in the running for the best Red Sox pitcher I've ever seen if you remove the 2 Pedro seasons, which obviously can't be touched. But he's up there with any Clemens season. He's up there with any non-99 2000 Pedro season. I don't know what else you would put up there. Schilling in 2004, he blows away. But it's like every time I watch Chris Sale, and now it's to the point where it's like you have to watch him because he's like a potential 20 strikeout game every time. And the problem is his pitch count always gets a little too high. What was the game? It was the last time he pitched, they had to take him out in the 8th inning, and they put.
That was the 16-inning game. The Yankees ended up winning. He started that one, or 15-inning, whatever it was, 16.
Yeah, he got to 118 pitches, and they probably rightly took him out and brought in Kimbrel in the 8th, which is just basically saying we want this game to go 15 innings because Kimbrel just can't. He's like one of those classic closers that you just can't bring him in the 8th inning. But Chris Sale has been awesome, and Price on Sunday night was the best Price has looked as not only a Red Sox pitcher, but probably even the last couple of years. Like David Price was back on Sunday night. So
unfortunately, I usually never fear Price because the Yankees do great against him, but he pitched well.
So if we can get old Ricky P going, I don't know. It's a nice little playoff rotation.
Really sketchy.
Yeah. There's some.
Yeah, if you guys get in the playoffs, I mean, you're going to be dangerous because Sale, in a 7-game series, if you can set it up that he starts 3 times, that's, you'd like your chances there.
He's ridiculous.
And, Price doesn't love the playoffs, but maybe he can, they can hypnotze him that it's the regular season and see what happens.
All right. You didn't have to attack David Price. I didn't appreciate that. He's been through enough this season.
That's true. He's been dealt with a lot.
All right. I want to talk about the Mike and the Mad Dog 30 for 30, but first, Johnny, summer is the perfect time to upgrade your underwear drawer.
Don't I know it?
Everyone is looking good and feeling good. MeUndies are the ultimate feel-good undies. Designed in LA. Every pair of MeUndies is made with micromodal. You know what that is, Johnny?
No, it sounds good, though.
It's a fabric 3 times softer than cotton. Their soft, stretchy undies come in an ever-changing array of colors and patterns. My wife, MeUndies always mails me underwear, and I wear all of it. And now I wear nothing else other than MeUndies, and she makes fun of me constantly about it. I've never seen you get attached to a product like this. I'm like, hey man, I like comfortable underwear. They come in all kinds.
They make those in a boy small?
They come in all kinds of colors and patterns. This month's patterns were designed by the legendary 80s clothing brand Cross Colors with names that live up to their bold design and bright colors. Increase D-Piece, Yadig, and the OG. See them for yourself right now. Save 20% off your first pair. Receive free shipping only at MeUndies.com/BS. And if you don't love your first pair of MeUndies, they're free. There's a reason MeUndies has sold over 5 million pairs to date. Get 20% off your first pair plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/BS right now. All right, let's talk about Mike and the Mad Dog.
Yeah. I liked it, obviously. I mean, I could watch anything about Mike and the Mad Dog. It could have just been them, sitting in a room talking about the weather, and I was going to give it 2 thumbs up. I wish it was longer. I think it could have been 2 hours. But, of course, I'm a unique demographic, and I'm not sure the general public at large wants to watch 2 hours on Mike and the Mad Dog.
They didn't.
But I thought it was, a good synopsis of their time together and, what they did for sports radio. And, I love hearing the old clips. And just Mad Dog is such a fascinating person to me. Just his mannerisms and his way he speaks, just such an odd guy that it's just funny as hell to watch him interact with other humans to me.
Right. It's weird. It's weird for me critiquing 30 for 30 for about 100 obvious reasons, but
sure.
I thought it should have been 90 minutes. I thought it should have set the stage a lot in a much more profound way about what sports radio was like before and after they showed up.
Right. I don't think they did enough as to what it was like before them.
It
like
was
with Pete Franklin on the fan and everything.
Yeah, it wasn't. And you didn't even have to just concentrate on New York. You could have gone to any local city. Like Boston had the sports huddle with Eddie Andelman, who we always used to make fun of when we were in college. But, it was him and these basically two buddies. And it was, there was some DNA of Mike and the Mad Dog in that show before they kind of lost their fastball. But it made it seem like they kind of created this two-man format, which I didn't think was necessarily true. And then it made it seem like everybody copied that format from that point on, which I also don't think is true, because you also have the Colin Cowherd type of booths. Or you have the Colin Cowherd, like guy by himself just being like, coming up, I'm going to tell you why the Seinfeld cast is like the Golden State Warriors. That's coming up next. And just these like 10-minute monologues about whatever. But so that was one thing. I thought if I had been involved, I would have really pushed them to make it more about like sports radio and how it evolved and how important they were in that. But the thing I thought they really missed, and they glossed over the 90s, and there was a whole 20-minute section I feel like should have been in there, like how huge Mike and the Mad Dog were in 1994.
Oh yeah.
And I was in Connecticut that summer. And it was basically like the OJ trial, the Knicks, the Rangers. The Knicks and Rangers both made the finals. The OJ thing happens. It's an incredible movie summer, which is another part that they didn't really hit with, like, it could be Mike and the Mad Dog that summer. First of all, they were throwing 105 miles an hour each, but
right.
But those were shows where it could be like, you're talking about the Rangers Stanley Cup Finals, but then it would go to OJ, and then it'd be like, hey, dog, what'd you think of Forrest Gump? And
exactly.
And that was the year of Forrest Gump, Shawshank, Pulp Fiction. It was a really great movie year, and they had opinions on all of it. And there was just nothing like it. And I almost feel like they didn't even hit how just unbelievable it was to hear two people talk on the radio about anything like that. I had never heard. You and I, what was the year we did? We drove to the Jersey Shore and we just listened to them for 5 hours. Yeah. We listened to them for 5 hours and then talked like them the whole weekend.
Sometimes the funniest part ever is when they talked about non-sports things.
Always.
Like movies. Like they would have Jeffrey Lyons on once a year or a couple times a year, and they would talk about what movies were out there, what was going to win the Academy Award, and you're listening to these two guys talk about that, and you're just like dying laughing. And they were completely serious, but it was just like so over the top. It's so funny. I never forget Mad Dog. They had him on once, and he's talking about Oliver Stone, and he's like, Oliver, all your movies are so dark. How about a romantic comedy? And he was serious. He wanted Oliver Stone to do like a romantic comedy.
Yeah,
oh my God.
That was the thing. There was so much intentional and unintentional comedy with those guys that it just didn't hit. And like they were the guys that basically that guessed the TV ratings, which Sal eventually Sal and I did Guess the Lines, but Guess the Lines came from Guess the TV ratings. All right, Mike.
Right.
British Open, day 3. What do you think? And Mike would like seriously ponder it and be like, 1.8, 1.2. But
you'd be like, New York, 1.2, national, 1.5. And then Dog would be like, it was a 1.6. Yeah, it's a good number. It's a good number.
Right. The other thing it didn't hit was, part of the Dog's success was that he was the outsider, and like, he would really torment the New York fans, and he was it was almost like the precursor to the internet troll,
Exactly,
and he took so much delight. He hated the Yankees. He took so much delight in their demise of anything.
Right, and callers would call him up and be so mad that he wouldn't like worship Jeter and worship Joe Torre, and he would go back and forth with Torre when Torre took too many Yankees to the All-Star game, and he delighted in pissing off New York fans because he was not a fan really of any New York teams.
Which is
he loved to give them the needle.
Yeah, you have the biggest city in America and one of the most passionate sports cities in America, and you have a guy who doesn't like their teams hosting the signature show.
Right.
And then combined with Mike, who is like the all-time biggest Yankee fan. He's a huge Parcells fan. Parcells goes to the Jets. That was another thing they skipped over was Parcells going to the Jets when that show was at its peak, and Francesa was one of his best friends, and they had obviously all this inside info, and
that caused a lot of bad blood between them because Dog would always be like, Parcells can do no wrong to you. Like even when Parcells was screwing up the Jets or the Cowboys, and Francesa would never call him out because he was his friend, and Dog would call him out, and then they would like not speak for 2 weeks. You know,
I couldn't believe they didn't speak for 2.5 months. I didn't know that part.
That's crazy. Yeah, that
I
is
can't
crazy
even
to do a show like that with somebody.
Because like Mike and Mike apparently don't really talk anymore.
That too.
Yeah, there's this great YouTube clip of them announcing that Mike's going to leave the show to this thing, and they're not making eye contact. They're just kind of staring at like the table and not looking at each other, which is like, you hate each other when you can't even make eye contact when you're doing a radio show together. It's like impossible. What else are you going to look at? Of course you're going to look at the guy. But yeah, I felt like they could have blown that out. And if they had gone 2 hours, then it becomes a whole thing about the history of sports radio in this country. Like that's a totally different documentary, and you use those guys as the focal point. I wish they had done that. My thing is, if you're going to do it. Like go all out. Make it really ambitious.
More global.
Yeah, this was, I don't know. It was like a surface treatment of it. I don't know how you gloss over the 90s, and I don't think there's any way to properly explain how important those guys were in the mid 90s in the New York sports scene. Like the other thing they missed was, for years and years and years and years and years, the most important person in a big city was always the newspaper columnist.
Right. Yep.
And it was like,
say that, yep.
Yeah, before them it was Mike Lupka, and in Boston obviously it was like Gammons and Bob Ryan and Shaughnessy even. But you go down the line, everybody, Washington had Kornheiser and Wilbon. You go on down the line, it was always the newspaper columnist. And this was the first time that kind of the voice on things became a sports radio host. And
I mean, they single-handedly brought Mike Piazza to the Mets.
Yeah, they covered that
for weeks and weeks. They made that happen.
Yeah.
And they talked about that in the documentary where, Nelson Doubleday was getting calls, and they're like, I mean, they made Mike Piazza happen to the Mets. And there was a time, certainly, in the 50s when it was all newspaper generated, where a newspaper columnist could make things happen with the team, get a guy fired or get a guy traded or whatever. And that totally flipped that. That's true, because it was pre-internet, and so it was, and for whatever reason, they had a bigger market than TV did, because you had 5 hours a day. So guys that are in their cabs or driving or happen to be listening at work, they had a huge more of a following than even like a TV guy would have. So they single-handedly made things happen in the way that columnists did in the 50s. Definitely.
And that was another thing the doc missed, I thought, was when they rose to prominence, late 80s, heading into the early 90s, mid 90s, it was all pre-internet. And sports radio was just more important in 1994. It was like, this was our only outlet to hear people talk about the stuff we were talking about. You could either read or listen to sports radio with 2 newspapers and a sports radio station. And then the internet kind of came into play, 96, 97 range, and it started to shift, but it really didn't totally shift until the early 2000s. But, in 1994, if we're talking about the OJ trial, it's just you and me at a bar, but then there's no other conversation happening that we're a part of. And it's like, oh, these guys are talking about it, and it just went to another level. And I thought it missed that too. I just think it was more important to have a job like that in the mid 90s pre-internet. Now it's like you can get opinions anywhere. You go on Twitter and get 40 opinions in a minute.
Somebody who was not as familiar with Mike and the Mad Dog, I got a lot of tweets about it after the fact, and people sending me messages on Twitter. And somebody was like, they have a Francesa convention, and they're like, it looked like it was about 98% male. And I'm like, well, I think that may be an underestimation.
Yeah, I was going to say 100%.
Yeah, I don't think there was a woman within 5 miles of Francesa Khan.
No, and that was I don't know how they would have covered this in the doc, but they were also probably the all-time record for if you were in the car with your girlfriend or wife, and they came on, you'd be like, "Turn that off! I hate those guys."
Exactly. Yeah. That's uniquely male is the demographic for Mike the Mad Dog.
All right, you have 30 seconds to talk about Trump, and then we're leaving.
Okay. Well, I'm tired of all the winning, as you can probably tell, because it's just one success after another.
Yeah, it's been
just
great.
Incredible.
He's really banging out wins.
I read something that was interesting. He went over to the G20, and it said that basically, like, foreign leaders have learned that if you, like, celebrate him and tell him how wonderful he is and, like, shake his hand and treat him to, like, a grand parade and a spectacle, he has no principles. So as long as you're nice to him, like, he'll do whatever you want. So I'm worried one of these days, like, he's going to go over to France, and they're going to end up with New Hampshire, and he's going to come back and be like, I gave New Hampshire to France, but it was a wonderful cake. It was chocolate like you wouldn't believe. They gave me a parade, so New Hampshire's now part of France. It makes you nervous. Like, he goes over to France for Bastille Day last week, and Macron, the guy who's the new president of France, they had this legendary 30-second handshake because, you don't want Trump's whole thing is do this power move of, like, not being the last guy to stop shaking hands or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just crazy when you think about it. But, like, I just don't know what he's capable of. And, he goes over there representing the United States at the G20, and it's like, President of the United States Donald Trump. And you're just like, my God, how did we get here? It's just I still can't wrap my head around it. I say that every time, but it's the truth.
No headline is surprising anymore. It was like yesterday, him and Putin had a second meeting that they didn't tell us about.
Right.
I was like, okay, all right. I'm not surprised to hear that. It's great. I'm excited.
And when his kid has this meeting with all these people, and the New York Times is like doggedly after the story, and you think it's like the reporters think it's like Watergate, they're Woodward and Bernstein, and then he like tweets out the whole thing. Oh yeah, I met with these guys, and like everybody's like, oh, he's Fredo. I think that does a disservice to Fredo, frankly.
Right.
Like Fredo didn't write a note to Michael like I was with Johnny Ola in Cuba,
Yeah, I was thinking. Fredo's been the go-to joke for so many years with this.
Right.
And Don Jr. really has a chance to become, like, just supplant Fredo and just become the go-to joke whenever there's that type of joke. Like,
right.
Oh, he's the Don Jr. of blank.
Exactly. The whole thing is just, every day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, what's today going to bring, or what new embarrassment are we going to have to deal with? So, it's just,
well, I have good news,
it's just
Johnny.
Crazy.
We're
What's that?
We're 1/8 of the way home.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, Johnny. This was a pleasure as always. It's hard to believe we
Thanks,
talked
buddy.
about the Yankees, Mike and the Mad Dog 30-30, and Trump. Who saw that coming? It was
Right,
incredible.
go
Stay cool in the summer. I hope Aaron Judge bounces back from this terrible tailspin he's in. I hope his career is okay. It would be awkward if has anyone ever won the home run title while finishing the season in the minors? Serious question.
Oh my God.
Would they send him down to work on a swing before the playoffs?
He was 2 for 4 yesterday with 2 RBIs. So the home run derby and the All-Star break, it's all behind us now. Onward and upward.
I wish you the worst of luck. Talk to you soon.
And you as well. Bye-bye.
All right, on the phone, Shay Serrano. How are you, Shay?
What up, boss?
We're going to talk about sports movie ducks in a second. But first, everyone loves massages, but it's always hard to book one. Well, what if you could book a 5-star top-quality massage at a time that works for you in the most convenient place of all, your home? Or in Shay's case, your office. You could do this in your office, right, Shay? You have your own little office. Check out Zeal.com, ZEEL.com. Same-day in-home massages with the best licensed and vetted massage therapists on demand at home. Download the iPhone or Android app. Select the massage therapist. Choose your favorite technique, gender preference, time and location for your massage 365 days a year. They can be there in less than an hour with a table, music, everything you need to turn your living room into a spa. No money changes hands. Even the tip is included if you do it on their app. Zeal costs on average 20 to 50% less than going to a local spa or hotel. And guess what? Our listeners get $25 off their first massage by using promo code BS. That's my initial, Shay. At checkout, sign up for Zeal's massage membership. Get 20% off all your massages, plus a free massage table and sheet set. That's a $380 value. Yours free. No initiation fee to join the membership. Go to Zeal, ZEEL.com, or Zeal's iPhone or Android app. Then make sure to click add promo code at checkout to use my code BS. $25 off your first in-home on-demand massage. All right, Shay Serrano is a writer for The Ringer. He's my old Grantland teammate. We have worked together for 4+ years. Tate Frazier won't give him a podcast. Are you talking to Tate? What's going on there?
I refuse to talk to Tate. Bill, can I say real quick?
Yeah.
I was reading this story not that long ago, actually, maybe a couple weeks. It was this guy was talking about the first time that he was in the studio with Nas when Nas was rapping, and how like this incredible experience it was. I feel like he felt the same way I did right now listening to you read an ad for the podcast.
I'm
sure. The first time I've been on
had to be memorable for you. Yeah, someday when Tate gives you a podcast, you're going to have to learn how to do ads at the level we've established here at The Ringer.
One of these days.
We should mention you have a book coming out. What's the date? October
10, 10/10/17, baby.
What's the name of the book?
Basketball and Other Things.
So you wrote the rap movie book, which not only became a cult classic, but actually became successful. People bought it. It was the rare combination of a cult classic that actually sold copies, and people love it. You've had all kinds of strange celebrities writing about it, tweeting about it, hitting you up, and now you're going to do the basketball version of it. I'm excited. Give us the 20-second synopsis of what the book's about.
The book is about, every chapter is a different basketball question that needs to be answered. But it's not basketball questions like Magic or Bird or whatever bullshit like that. Like, it's new, interesting questions.
Right. New questions that have not been asked yet.
Yes, hopefully.
Okay. All right. Well, on theringer.com today, you wrote about the best, worst movie dunk. Explain what that means.
Yes, we're talking about usually when you're watching a movie and there's a basketball scene in it, the person who is playing basketball is an actor, and that actor is generally not very good at basketball, so they got to do all these fancy cutaway tricks and whatnot to make it look like they're good. And a thing that they struggle a lot with is making it look like somebody who can't dunk knows how to dunk. So the article was talking about that.
All right, you listed there's 22 that were in contention for the best, worst movie dunk of all time. I'm going to rip through these very quick. John Tucker's flip dunk, Ed Norton, American History X, which we're going to talk about in a second, Catwoman's dunk in Catwoman, which I forgot they even made Catwoman, Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, O and O, which underrated. I was glad you brought up O. Air Bud on the poster for Air Bud, Scott Howard as a werewolf in Teen Wolf, Billy Hoyle's alley-oop in White Man Can't Jump. File that one away. I want to talk about it. Boogaloo's two-hander and above the rim, which 3 years ago on Grantland, Rafe Bartholomew, Andrew Sharp, and myself did an above the rim thing, and all of us had a lot of problems with Marlon Wayans in that dunk, but we're going to talk about that too. Lola Bunny in Space Jam, Rocky's rim attack dunk in Three Ninjas, Kenny Tyler in Six Man, Calvin Cambridge in Like Mike, Brian Newell in Thunderstruck. I can't even believe Thunderstruck made did Kevin Durant didn't even see Thunderstruck. Did you watch Thunderstruck, or did you just go on YouTube? You didn't watch Thunderstruck, right?
I watched Thunderstruck. Of course, I watched Like Mike 2, Thunderstruck. I'm all over those movies, man.
All right. Chip Douglas and Cable Guy, which I had forgotten about. The winning dunk in the air up there. The Super, which we're going to talk about that too. John Bender's dunk in The Breakfast Club. I'm glad you brought this up because my daughter and I just watched this movie and I was horrified by it. You said it was a 9-foot rim. I think it was like a 7.5-foot rim. Joanna Man, which might be the most underrated basketball movie right now. Oh, Tate agreed with that. Your nemesis, Tate Frazier, agreed with my Joanna Man opinion.
Of course he did.
Elliot Richards and Bedazzled. What the hell is Bedazzled? What is that?
You've never seen Bedazzled?
No.
Oh, Bedazzled is great. So Bedazzled came out, right around 2000 or so. It stars Brendan Fraser. He's in love with this woman. He wants to make her fall in love with him. He makes a deal with the devil, played by Elizabeth Hurley. And she's going to grant him wishes, and he's trying to make his life better so that he can get the attention of this woman. But every time that they get a wish granted, there's something wrong with it. And in Bedazzled, one of his wishes, he wishes to be a famous athlete. So the devil makes him this 7'6" basketball superstar. They show one game, he's dunking it from beyond the three-point line. He's throwing hook shots or behind the back from past half court. Everything switches. He scores over 100 points, like 40-something rebounds. But the main issue with that one, they're in the locker room, and he's being interviewed by the woman he's in love with, and his towel falls down, and it turns out he has a super tiny penis.
Oh.
And so he's like, you know what? Never mind. I don't want to be a rich, famous basketball star anymore because I don't want to have this tiny penis. And every wish there's something wrong with it. That's the movie. It's fantastic.
I have a serious question. Was this a porn movie?
It was not a porn movie.
Oh, it's not a porn movie.
It
okay.
maybe should have been.
Okay. Last two. Quincy McCall's one-on-one dunk at the end of Love and Basketball, which is a great movie. He dunks on his future wife. And then the dunk in Celtic Pride. Far be it for me to critique your list. I thought you left out a key dunk, but we're going back almost 40 years, so I don't blame you, and I'm a little older than you. But Robbie Benson made a movie called One-on-One. I'm going to say 1977, where he's this high school. Okay. Did you see One-on-One?
I don't watch any movie that came out before 1980.
Is this like a is this a rule you made?
I made it up. I made it up right now.
All right.
You said that, and I felt.
So One-on-One, he's this high school recruit. He gets recruited by this big college, which I think is called like Big State or something. And he's a point guard. He's like a Ricky Rubio type, I would say. Floppy hair. Couldn't have been taller than like 5'10", 5'11". And at one point during one of the games, dunks in traffic. And you're gonna have if you spend the time you spent making this list, I'm gonna send you the Robbie Benson dunk, and you're gonna have issues with it.
Okay.
Also, just from a dunking standpoint, should not have made the list, but Dr. J's date in The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, when he takes
I love that.
all those dunks were realistic, but he is in street clothes on a date just dunking for this girl for no reason, which is one of my favorite things.
I think they're on like they're sitting on a Ferris wheel or something, and she's telling him this very serious life issues that she's having.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Come with me," and then he just makes her watch him play basketball for like 2 minutes.
But that movie came out before 1980. That was a pre-1980 movie. Yeah, I just think you missed One-on-One. I think you just missed it. Look, you watched every basketball movie ever. All right, so you whittled this list down. And for some reason, you just decided to jettison Ed Norton's American History X dunk, which, in my opinion, the context of the blacks versus whites pickup game, which was just bizarre anyway, but then how jacked Ed Norton was and was obviously did PEDs for the movie. I don't want to accuse Ed Norton of anything, but he gained 35 pounds of muscle just for that movie, and now it doesn't look like that anymore. But then the game ends with him doing off of 2 feet a reverse two-handed dunk, which I would say 50% of the NBA players couldn't do. And he's probably about 6 feet tall.
A tough dunk.
So why? How does that not even make the Final Four for this list?
Well, I think you should start every countdown you're ever doing by just automatically getting rid of any Nazis. That's the rule that we set in place there.
Fair, but he by the end of the movie was not a Nazi by the end of the movie.
He wasn't, but he was a Nazi when he dunked it.
Okay,
I
fair.
like that I tell you that we can't cut out Nazis, and you're like, yeah, you're right, but, and then we go, when I was in San Antonio, when I was living here before I left for college,
yeah,
I was in attendance for a blacks versus white basketball game.
What?
And there was this group of guys who lived down the street from us. Now, I lived in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, but there was a section where it was like a bunch of black people there, and there was also a section on the other side there was like a fair amount of white people. And we were playing basketball one day at one of the white kids' houses, and a group of the black guys came, and they were like, okay, we got next. And somebody was like, hey, let's play whites versus blacks. And they didn't let me play, which is why I remember. I was very sad, because I was asking them, what team do I go on? Because I'm Mexican. There's no Mexican team out here right now. Who do I get to play with? And they made me just sit and watch. And it was not that much fun.
Neither team
and
claimed you?
Neither team. No, they already had their group. They had their group of 5. And the white guys got blown out. So there you go.
Tate, have you ever played a whites versus blacks basketball game?
It happens sometimes.
Tate's from Carolina. I mean, he's seen some stuff. But let's just leave it at that.
He absolutely has played an egg.
Yeah, he's seen some dark things. You cut out one of you established a bunch of ground rules to cut down from the 22. And prerequisite number 6 was the dunk has to contain at least one camera cutaway during either the setup or the actual dunk. because a camera cutaway is absolutely essential to accidentally making supposed to be serious things look silly, which I agree with. But that led to you cutting out Billy Hoyle's dunk at the end of White Man Can't Jump, which there's two major flaws with that movie. I like that movie less than others. One is how bad Wesley Snipes is at basketball and how nobody dribbles like that or has a game like that. And I just thought he was terrible. But the Billy Hoyle dunk, I've just never been able to get over. And it was so clearly an 8-foot rim, and they so clearly screwed up how high he jumped. Like, his whole head's over the rim. He's like, what is he, like 5'11"? So how do you justify cutting this out?
Well, because it didn't have the cutaway. If they would have utilized the cutaway like they did, the Edward Norton dunk we talked about earlier, it's clearly fake, but it looks like maybe it could have been real because they do a shot from up underneath, and then they also do a shot from the top, which a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
And it looks like he maybe got up that high. But yeah, with the White Man Can't Jump, when they stay on him the whole time, and so you see the distance that is covered, he is barely off the ground before his hands are at the rim. So he's either suddenly as tall as Yao Ming, or it's a very tiny rim. You need that cutaway to make it work.
What was your reason for cutting out the Marlon Wayans dunking above the rim? Because I can't think of a good reason.
He murdered somebody. Anybody who kills somebody, you're automatically out.
I like that you really have strong morals about your best worst dunk. I think it's good. No Nazis, no murderers. Who else gets cut out?
Those two guys definitely get cut out. We're also cutting out any children because this is a serious competition.
Right.
Also, we're cutting out animals. And after that, it's fair game.
I think animals was a good call. Also, I found out from your piece that Mekhi Phifer was only 5'9", and they had to use a stunt double to do his dunk, which is pretty embarrassing. All right, so two left. Your finals were Chip Douglas's up the back dunk in the Cable Guy versus Louis Kritzky's dunk in the Super, which raises the question: who is Louis Kritzky and what's the Super? So explain what the Super is.
The Super is a movie where Joe Pesci plays almost a slumlord of sorts, and he gets ordered to live in the building that he owns. It's a really bad building. He goes to court. The judge sentences him to live there for a while. And then, of course, while he's there, he begins to realize, oh, these are actual humans with real needs, and he starts to grow a heart. But during the middle part of the movie, he makes friends with the guy who lives in the building, and they invite him to play basketball. And it turns out it ends up being a hustle. But in the beginning of the game, they're letting him make all these shots and stuff, and the first game ends with him dunking it somehow, even though Joe Pesci's only 5'4". And that one also has a great cutaway. And then it's also funny because they shoot from the underside, and he's dunking, and the rim is bigger than the width of his body.
Right.
It looks already ridiculous, and he's dunking over like a 6'8" guy. So there you go. That's the movie. That's the dunk.
So you think Joe Pesci, who's about 5'3" and not athletic, and was wearing a wig in the movie, you don't think it was realistic that he dunked?
I don't think it was that realistic. It was almost realistic, but not quite realistic.
And then the Cable Guy, he jumps off someone's back, but then ends up about, as you wrote, a good 4 feet over the rim.
Right. Yeah, he jumps off Jack Black.
Jumps off Jack Black. So who was the winner? Who did you have? I know the answer, but tell our listeners.
Chip Douglas wins because all of the other parts are the same. They both do the camera cutaway tricks. They're both pretty ridiculous, but not entirely ridiculous, because I watched videos of a guy on YouTube who's 5'5" and is doing NBA style dunks, just straight up cocking it back, real dunk. So a 5'4" guy could presumably dunk, but the main difference here is the Chip Douglas dunk. We've got him jumping off the back, which makes sense if he's going to dunk it. But the fact that he goes up as high as he does, 14 feet high, up past the top of the backboard, would to me say that he already possesses the leg strength to just do a dunk without jumping off of a person. So the fact that he did jump off a person just barely puts it over the top.
Tate, you agree with all this?
I agree. I mean, for bad worst, I agree.
Tate, I know you hate Tate, but he agrees.
I'm on your side, Tate.
Tate's maybe he's trying to suck up to you. I don't know what the deal is. All right.
I don't buy it.
congratulations to Chip for having the best worst movie dunk of all time. And I liked your reasons for cutting out animals and Nazis and murders. I think all very fair points. Quickly before you go, should we talk about the death of the Spurs and your gradual drifting back to the middle?
Yes. Let's do it quickly because I don't have the heart for it. I'm in San Antonio right now. We're all commiserating. It's very bad.
You know what's interesting? The Spurs fans for years justifiably were like, we don't get enough attention. People don't like us. Tim Duncan is better than Kobe. Why don't people think this? Why doesn't Tim Duncan get more respect? Why don't we get more respect? It was a whole thing. Then the internet, as the internet basketball writing got smarter and people appreciated Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich and the infrastructure of the Spurs and all that stuff, then it started to flip around 2013. And now everybody is pro Spurs and always thinking the Spurs are the smartest team and they're doing the right thing. I would argue the Spurs should be really criticized for the summer. I think they had a terrible summer and they're worse. They didn't really help themselves from a salary cap standpoint heading into next year or the year after the season. They didn't get Chris Paul. They, instead of just eating the Pau Gasol contract, which is terrible, they got out of it, but then gave him a longer contract. So you're going to have to pay him for seasons beyond this year, which I don't really understand. They let Jonathan Simmons go. Their big signing was Rudy Gay, who just blew out his Achilles, and you already have Tony Parker blew out his Achilles. So you have two of your top six have blown out Achilles. You didn't trade LaMarcus Aldridge, which everyone in the league knows that he's unhappy and that he was a bad fit, and he's complaining about Popovich. And you have the Spurs going, if you can't be happy in this system, how do you think we can trade you? Everybody thinks we have the best infrastructure. If you're not happy here, nobody wants you. What is good about what's going on with the Spurs right now?
This season is not the good part. The good part will be the season after this. All of the things you mentioned are true. And also I would say they're all the bad things that you talked about are tied to LaMarcus Aldridge, because him coming out and saying he wanted to be traded just sort of screwed everything up. For the reasons that you mentioned, how do you not want to play with the Spurs? If you don't want to, fine, just be quiet and let us trade you, and you go to a team and make somebody else miserable. But once you start saying you don't want to be there, then your trade value drops. Nobody wants to make a good deal. Chris Paul doesn't want to come here anymore. It was all LaMarcus's fault. It's a disaster.
So
he's already got his house on the market here in San Antonio. He knows it's a wrap.
So he is in the running for your least favorite Spurs of all time.
Absolutely in the running. It's him. It's Richard Jefferson, and those are the top two guys.
Oh, Richard Jefferson murdered you guys.
It was so bad.
He for multiple years.
He's a bigger, more expensive Richard Jefferson.
Wow. It was crazy that they were shopping him like they were going to get a lottery pick for him. I mean, I would argue you'd almost have to take back somebody else's bad contract to get rid of him. Because, and here's the other thing. I actually think I would trade for him if I was certain teams in the league. Because I don't know if they used him the way he should be used. I think they tried to shoehorn him in the way that, you know, they expected him to bend on his game a little bit and do some things to try to fit in with what they do. And I think he just wants to post up from 15 feet away and do LaMarcus Aldridge things and have the whole offense revolve around him. Otherwise, he's not happy. But there's teams in the league that he could do that on that would be 42-win teams. So
that's exactly what he wants, and it worked out well for him in Portland. I mean, all of those big championships they got.
Right,
that was great.
They made round two once with him. But he was really good that one year when he really laid the smackdown before Dame Lillard became good and he became threatened by Dame Lillard. But he had that one year where he was like 25 and 11 or something every night for 4 months. I don't know if that guy is still here.
That was a guy who destroyed the Rockets. I was watching that series with Portland and the Rockets played, and he went nuts just against everybody. And that was a guy who I thought was showing up for us. Like, oh, this guy was built to play in the playoffs. He just hadn't had a chance. And it turned out that was a total fluke. I realized, he was being guarded by Omar Asik or whoever. And then, maybe he wasn't that great after all. But it's too late now. We're screwed for this year. 2019 NBA champion San Antonio Spurs. We got Murray. We got Kawhi. We're gonna get somebody else. I don't know yet. We're good.
Tate is just laughing and shaking his head. I just want you to know that.
Of course he is.
Would you rather have Dwight or LaMarcus?
Would you rather have Dwight Howard or LaMarcus? Tate wants to know.
Give me LaMarcus.
Yeah,
Dwight is my number one enemy.
Nobody wants Dwight. Yeah, I don't know what they do, and the shame of it is Kawhi's probably at his apex right now, and the team. I actually, it's funny to see people pencil them as a top 3 team. I think it's the Warriors 1, no question, in the West.
No question.
Houston, I think, would be the best candidate for 2, and then I think 3's up for grabs. And I don't know if we can say the Spurs quote unquote infrastructure is going to be enough anymore, because I don't know when's Parker. Parker's not going to come back till All-Star break earliest. That Achilles always seems to be like a 1.5 to a 2-year injury. And then you got Rudy Gay too, who is the big signing, and I don't really see him making a huge impact, at least in the first half of the season anyway. And then you lose Simmons. Right. I really like Simmons. I don't know what's going on with him, but the contract he signed with Orlando was not commensurate with what I watched in the playoffs. I thought he was one of your best two-way guys. He was fantastic in the playoffs, but he also wasn't a vital part of what the Spurs. There were I think 31 games where he either didn't play or he played less than 15 minutes, and people sort of forget that part because he showed out in the Rockets series. He wasn't super important. He was a beloved guy here in town. Well, you know what the problem is, though?
Tony's out for a good while. What's the problem?
He's the same position as Kawhi.
Yeah, that is a bit of a problem.
When Kawhi got hurt and Simmons actually was getting some of the minutes, it became clear he's just a natural small forward. I think it would have been hard to play those two guys together. When they did it, it was interesting, right. But I don't know necessarily if that's the thing. But he's the guy. The value for him is you want him guarding Paul George and Kevin Durant and all these different types of guys, but you already have Kawhi to do that. So that hurts some of his value. I was surprised that Orlando was able to swipe in and steal him. Did you sign Dedmon or no?
No, he left as well, I believe.
See,
Tony's injury was the quad, not the Achilles.
Oh yeah, that's right. Blew out the quad.
Yeah.
So what's the comeback for that?
About 6 months, they say. So yeah, somewhere around All-Star break, right before, right after. Well, I think who's the 3rd seed? I think it's Oklahoma. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping San Antonio holds on to 3rd, but I think it might be Oklahoma.
On paper, it could be if those guys figure it out. I keep staring at the West, it just seems improbable to me that this Paul George rental thing is going to work for 1 year, and then I keep staring at the West trying to figure out who could supplant them. And they're probably the safest bet, right? Because Blake's not coming back for the Clippers until December at the earliest. Minnesota will take a little bit to gel, it seems like. Denver will take a little while. You just go on down the line. Everybody talks about how unbelievable the West is, and it's definitely good. But I think from 3 to 11, I don't know. I think Boston, Cleveland, and Washington are probably safer bets than any team 3 to 11 in the West. And then Houston, your least favorite team. We don't know if Chris Paul and James Harden can coexist.
I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out. Those guys
me too. I'm not positive. I'm not positive. Are you?
Right. I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping that they don't. I'm hoping they take turns. I'm hoping it's like the beginning of when Dwayne and LeBron were together, and they were just like, okay, you do it now, and then I'll do it, and then you do it. And then I hope that that's what happens with the Rockets, and then they lose to the Spurs in the second round again. That's my number one dream right there. But I think by March, they're going to know what's going on, and they're going to be fucking terrifying.
Yeah. There's a checkered history with alpha dogs playing together, and I think with Golden State, one of the reasons it works so well is because Durant and Curry not only so unselfish, but they actually really complemented each other. And by the end of the season, they figured out how to take turns, how to play off each other, how to use each other on the high screens. And in the finals, all of a sudden they're on the right side running these little right side high screens that I'd never really seen before. With Chris and James Harden, even when he was on OKC, was always kind of a give me the ball and everybody spread out kind of guy. And Chris Paul is a ball monopolizer. So I'm really interested to see how it plays out. I agree with you. I think they're both smart. But, then you throw in Carmelo, the all-time ball stopper, whenever that trade happens. And I don't know. It's a weird mix. I get the whole USA basketball. These guys figure it out. Why wouldn't they be able to figure it out here? But it's just a strange mix. The West.
Yeah, it's weird.
Here's my prediction. I think the Warriors are the best team in the West. I'm going out on a limb. Yeah.
Clearly. That's yours. All right.
Hey, John Wick 2, Fast 8, Baby Driver, and now Gene Wick with Charlize Theron coming up. Is 2017 the year of movies for Bill Simmons and Shea Serrano?
It is absolutely our year, Bill, and I could not be more excited for Atomic Blonde. I honestly could not.
It's going to be great. I love that people are just catering to us now, these movie studios. Thank you.
It makes sense.
Follow Shea. What's your Twitter handle? Is it just at Shea Serrano?
Yes, sir.
All right. And your book's coming out in October. And you'll be back on before here. I'm sorry about the Spurs. I enjoyed your best worst movie dunk piece. Thanks for coming on. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right.
All right, that's it for the BS podcast. You can pre-order Shay's book. Just go on Amazon or wherever you get it if you want to be one of the FOH Army. Tate's not. You're not allowed in the Army, Tate. The Army hates Tate. That's it. Don't forget about Talk the Thrones coming up Sunday night right after Game of Thrones on Twitter. Go to @Ringer. Use hashtag Game of Thrones, Talk the Thrones, or whatever. You will find it. All of our peeps talking about it. Also, speaking of Game of Thrones, Binge Mode, which we did 60 episodes of heading into season 7, they are posting the review of episode 1, season 7, which we are putting on the Binge Mode feed. So if you want to hear Mallory and Jason really go all-time deep dive, break down the show, go to Binge Mode, Game of Thrones. And also, check out Ringer NFL Show. You do a Lombardi podcast this week?
Today.
Tate and Lombardi, taping a day. Lombardi's getting in football mode. Whole bunch of great podcasts on the Ringer Podcast Network. Check all of them out. I am back later this week with one more podcast. And if you missed Jimmy Butler, go back into the archives because that was a good one too. Anyway, thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.